thinking.
It's not happening with him.
It's a matter of life and death.
I'll tell you what's the matter with life and death. That beautiful lady over there. Hey, baby, check out the gun show going on over here. Boom, boom, firepower. Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's not how the Force works. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
And we are live. All right, guys. So welcome back to an episode of Oh So Curious, where it's three curious minds trying to tell time. And today we have an all-star cast, as always. And I don't think we have done this combo before, right? It's of course me, your host, Daniel. I'm back. I was off for a few weeks, and then I was on the Halloween episode. I'm back today. But with us today, for only the second time on the show live, is Rolan Underground. Rolan, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. And then also with us is voice actor extraordinaire, as well as a bunch of other things, is Andrew Frankel.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Congratulations on Underground unofficially becoming your last name.
I know.
Yeah.
It was a process, but through much, harm and fights with FBI agents,
You
made it
have to go
happen,
to
guys.
the DMV and tell it's Underground now.
Yes. They looked at me weird, but they saw my mustache and they just didn't ask questions.
That makes sense.
I mean, I called him, and basically I was like, hey, Roland, what you up to? He's like, I'm at the courthouse. And I was like, what you doing at the courthouse? He's like, I'm getting my last name changed to Underground.
That day.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Fortuitous timing.
Dedication.
So what's going on today?
All right. Well, we kick off every show with quick hits. And if you have never seen the show or never heard the show before, I'll give you a quick intro to what a quick hit is. Quick hits are basically these little topics that pique our curiosity, and then we bring them to the table. We say, hey, in one of our meetings, production meetings, we're like, who wants to come up with a quick hit and talk about it at the top of the show? One of us raises their hands. We say, today I want to talk about why water is wet. That one never, gets picked, but we do have other good ideas, better ideas that do get picked for quick hits. So today, our first quick hit is going to be about the movie Eternals. I originally said, hey, anybody want to go see this thing? And I got crickets from our group. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go watch the movie and review it because it's one of the biggest movies coming out. It seems interesting. It's like a mix of a sci-fi movie as well as, it's a superhero movie. It's a Marvel movie from the MCU. So I went and saw it. I got to be honest. The theater that I went to was really it was a bad screen. I mean, it's not I go to that AMC all the time. I usually go to like their Adobe Cinema or IMAX, and it just happened to be that
It was a bad
those were all
screen?
sold out. It was a bad screen. Like it was dark. It wasn't like a high quality image. The sound was good, but the image quality was terrible. And I usually don't compromise on those things, but it was just like I can either see it on Thursday or I will not have any time until like we record the show. And so I had to be like, all right, well, I guess I'll watch it on a terrible screen. And
I have done that before, where it's a terrible screen, and it does ruin the movie a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. So I completely understand what you're talking about.
I mean, look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I've seen movies on a terrible screen, and obviously the experience is affected by that, right? But what didn't help this movie was it wasn't a great movie. So seeing it on a bad screen only like made the experience that much worse, because I feel like it only like to me made it like a worse. The movie is not good. So
Why?
here's my review.
Okay.
Here's my review. It's not a good movie.
Screen.
I'm not okay. So let me kind of preface the rest of my review by saying this. I am a fan of sci-fi and superhero films in general. I think the first superhero movie I ever saw in theaters was the original Spider-Man movie from Sam Raimi and with Tobey
Sure.
Maguire and all those guys. That was my first movie, superhero movie I ever saw in theaters. I've followed like all the other Marvel movies. I'm a big DC fan growing up. Batman is my favorite superhero of all time, and he still continues to be, and probably will always be my favorite superhero. But I've watched MCU movies right from the start. I still think Iron Man is one of the best superhero movies Marvel has ever put out, and I don't think they've managed to top it all that often or come close. I think like the first Avengers was great, Winter Soldier was great, but there's like almost 30 movies in the MCU now, so they tend to go up and down. But in general, their floor is really high. Like you expect Marvel movies to be coherent stories told well, where your protagonist has a nice character arc, and the action sequences sometimes are great, sometimes they're decent, but they're not like ever really bad, and the cinematography is usually great. And all in all, Marvel movies are generally tend to land somewhere from decent to fantastic. You don't ever see stuff that's like bad. This movie was the first Marvel movie that I would say is bad. And the reasons are many. Do you guys care to find out what those reasons are?
These are strong accusations you're saying right now.
No, I fully believe in what I'm saying here because
what are you saying?
Okay. So going to see this movie, it was sitting at like 52 some odd % on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
Yeah.
And when I went to see it, I had my doubts, but at the same time, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. The Rotten Tomatoes score, it is what it is. I sometimes read it just to get a reference, but I don't ever look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, which right now is sitting at 48%, and it's almost got 300 reviews. But you can see the audience score is 81%, so it varies. Like the audience might love it, and the critics might not. It's even like a Batman vs Superman, for example, hugely divisive movie. It had like a 20 or 30 something tomato meter score, and the audience score was like 70 or 80, so it varies sometimes. But this movie, here's what I gotta say. This movie has terrible pacing. I feel like they did a really bad job of editing it, and then the way the movie kind of plays from the beginning to the end, they have flashback sequences that are not done very well. Like they have flashback sequences in this movie, but they're just done in a way, like for example, here's this shot right here is from a flashback, like a montage. But the way they're spliced into the story does not help the movie at all because they're done very unevenly. Usually when you see flashback sequences in movies, it's like they show you what's going on currently, and then the flashback sequence sort of fills in the gap to what's going on in the movie in the present day. This movie does that like once or twice, but then the other flashback sequences seem out of place, and you get like one flashback scene, and then you get like a bunch of present day stuff, and then you get a huge flashback sequence, like out of place. There was just no pattern to it. The story to me was very all over the place. The character motivations were downright incoherent at times. Like you were like, I feel like I know what this guy wants. Like what Druig or what Icarus wants.
Do we know?
But then scene to scene they were incongruent, and sometimes within the same scene you were like, I don't know what this character wants because they keep changing what they want. Sorry, you were asking a question.
Yeah. Who are these heroes? I've never heard of the Eternals before. I feel like I'm not the only person who's like, just kind of like, who are these people?
Yeah, so
who are they?
Okay, so the Eternals, they're one of the lesser known Marvel comic characters. They were created by Jack Kirby after he came back to Marvel, having done the New Gods and all those other comics from the other, what was it, the Fourth World comics for DC. And then he came back, right, Roland, like the Fourth World comic, and then Jack Kirby came back to Marvel in his second run, and that's when he created the Eternals, and it was meant to be like a spiritual sequel to what he did with DC. And
yeah, I was gonna say he just ripped off his own work.
Well, right. I mean, can he call that a ripoff if he's ripping off his own work? But so if you look at these characters, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 10 of them, right? 8. That's too many characters. And Chloe Zhao, who directed this movie, she said that they cut out 2 characters. Like there were supposed to be 12 of these. So they cut them down to 10, and I'm like, you should have cut them down to like 5 or 6. because there's too many. But basically, they're meant to be these ancient, immortal beings that, as you find out in the movie, and let me put up a quick spoiler warning here, so that, because if you haven't seen the movie, this is one of the things that, you know, they do in the movie, and it's like a plot point. So they aren't really living beings in the sense they're flesh and blood. They're sort of like androids, is how they are described in the movie. And so they're immortal because of that. They're created by these other godly beings that are called the Celestials. And the Celestials are like the one that you see in the trailer. There's the what they call the Prime Celestial, and his name is Arasham. And so he basically is like the one who created these Eternals, sent them to Earth and amongst other planets to basically protect those planets, the life on those planets, from the deviants, who are like the antithesis of the Eternals. Like, so basically, there's like these biblical themes to how this was done, and this is
That's
from the
what I
source
was
material.
catching on to here. It's like,
Yeah.
because superhero movies have kind of become modern day myths, and
Right.
they've become religious figures, and it's like people flood the theaters to watch these things play out. But this is hitting me as very like Greek mythos, you know, like
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
it's starting to get a little religious, a little spiritual.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the source material. You know, like the way
Yeah.
so like, for example, and it also, some of these characters sort of borrow from a lot of those other like characters that are popular in pop culture. Like, for example, there's Richard Madden in this movie plays Icarus, which if you put a cape on him and an S on his chest, that's Superman. Except,
Yeah.
you know, unlike Superman, who can also be super fast and do a bunch of other things, and overall is a stronger character, Icarus can just, you know, he's just super strong, and apparently the strongest of the bunch of Eternals that we have in the movie, and he can shoot the lasers out of his eyes. And and by the way, another spoiler thing in this movie, they straight up reference Batman and Superman. They don't like just like say, oh, I like. They actually say Batman by name at one point in the movie, and they talk about
How does that
Superman very
work?
much on the nose. So apparently, this for the first time in the MCU's history, like in an MCU movie or TV show, they've straight up basically mentioned that, yeah, in the world of the MCU, DC movies and like DC comics exist like as a property. Like like normal people in the world of the MCU watch DC movies.
That's a real power
like,
move.
It's like,
It's like,
I mean,
our heroes are real, but in our universe, they're still fake.
yeah, but you know
That
what?
gets a
I
little
see what they were trying
confusing.
to do, but the
Yeah.
execution on this movie is really poor, because there's a scene in this movie that's in a trailer where they say, like, well, you know, the kid who's like Fastos. Fastos is like the tech, the techie guy. Let's see. I'm trying to find a picture of Fastos. I'll show you.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Brian Tyree Henry, who's on the far right here, like behind Angelina Jolie's character, he plays Fastos, and he's like the techno wizard.
Okay, I was wrong.
Guy. Basically, those are his superpowers. Are not only is he strong and stuff, but he's like freaking great with technology, and apparently he's credited with helping humanity develop the atomic bomb, and then he's disappointed that they, you know, destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki with it. That's also like layered into this. Like, there's a whole lot of alternate history stuff that happens in this movie about how the Eternals are all part of helping humanity advance, which always
How
bothers
long
me,
was
because
it?
I'm like, it totally discredits a lot of what, you know, actual humans in real life have done. Like, you, instead of like all the people that were part of this project that created this advanced technology, you're just saying, oh yeah, the Eternals just handed them a blueprint, and then they went and did this with it. Anyway, but
How long was this
Fastos,
movie?
this movie is like 2 hours 37 minutes, and you feel every minute of that.
Oy.
You feel literally every minute of that runtime, and as I was saying earlier, Brian Tyree Henry's kid in the movie, like you see it in the trailer where they're talking about Superman. He says, oh, I saw you on TV. He's with the cape. He's like, I don't wear a cape. So that's like a straight up reference to Superman. But then when I was watching the movie, I was like, but I sort of wish you did, because Icarus's character is this movie has one of his biggest flaws is there's too many characters, and each character is too one-dimensional, you know, and it just feels like a lot of them could have been merged into, like, 3 of them could have been one character, because they have like a cheaper version of the Flash, which is played by I don't remember her name right now, but she's an actual deaf person in real life. She's a deaf actor, and for the first time in a movie, she's the one on the left of this image next to Kamal Nanjiani's character. She's basically like the speedster of the team. But they introduce her in the beginning of the movie. You have a couple of montage scenes from the flashbacks. Then you don't see her until like 2 hours in the film. And then all she's there to do is be fast, and whenever they need somebody to be super fast, she does that. And that's the theme of this movie is a lot of these people come across as they're just there to do that one thing, which whenever you do a team-up movie, that tends to happen. But good directors find a way to like make it work so they come across as more than just one-dimensional people. And in this movie, most characters come across as one-dimensional. And overall, the movie has got bad pacing. It's got some good cinematography, but also there's some scenes that are just like really flat lighting and you know, they don't help the story at all. Kit Harington's character was one of the highlights of the movie, but he didn't get enough screen time.
Okay.
And I gotta say, if you've seen this movie and you like it, good on you. Everybody's opinion is their own, but for me, I would tend to agree more with the critics on this than you know with the audience rating. If you look at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, I think the 48% is a good reflection of what this movie is. It's not a great movie. It's honestly the first MCU movie that has some basic fundamental flaws that you never expect from MCU movies, which is like the pacing, the character motivation, the way it's edited. Like sometimes the logic of the story logic doesn't make sense. And there's no MCU movie that I remember that has had story logic issues. This one did. It feels like they either left a lot on the cutting room floor, or they tried to they tried to do too much and bit off a bit more.
At
than
2.5 hours, it doesn't sound like they left much on the cutting room floor.
Well,
Oh
I mean,
God.
most movies tend to like shoot for almost 3 to 4 hours of stuff to cut it down to that.
I know, but still,
right?
that's a lot.
No, but I know. For 2.5 hours, you would imagine they would be able to do stuff, but part of the reason is they have 10 characters, 10 main characters. That's too much to do in even 2.5 hours, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Like most movies, team-up movies have like 5 or 6. And there's like some plot points in this which are straight up. I was calling out X-Men movie like references while I was watching this movie. Like, oh, here's Professor X all over again, and that's like because one of the guys in this is a telepath, and it just this movie is weird. I'm not a big fan. I gotta say that's I had a lot to say about it, and that's basically where
and on a
Speaking
horrible
of which, I don't know
screen,
what
that
happened to
doesn't make
Roland.
anything better. Yeah, what happened to him?
Oh, hey,
There he is.
he's back.
Lost you.
Sorry
Lost
about
you there
that.
for
Yeah.
I just like ranted for I don't know how many minutes, but
Yeah, bad
You
pacing.
had to get it
You guys
out.
have any thoughts
Characters.
on the movie? Any thoughts?
I will never excuse bad pacing. I don't care what anybody says. It's you have all this time to work on pacing. That's like a big part of editing, and you can't. I can't forget that. And dealing with a lot of characters can be really tough. It's tough. It can be tough, like making 10 different characters and trying to figure out how they can interact. But if you're just doing 10 different suits, then it's like, what are you doing? This is just, we're wasting money at this point.
Yeah.
That's my opinion from what you're saying.
If there was one sentence that I could tell you, well, one way I would improve this movie is I kept saying this to myself during the movie, and even like I went to see it with my brother, and I kept telling him, I did this like several times. I was like, this would have been a better TV show, because the amount of stuff that they tried to do.
Even the poster kind of looks like Lost, and I thought, yeah, maybe you could get into even with you mentioned the flashbacks and all that. It's like I could watch a different version of Lost where they have superpowers, yeah, but I don't know. 2.5 hours and 10 characters.
Yeah, flashbacks in movies can get so boring and tiresome. They take you out of the time that you're spending, and it's just kind of disorienting. One of the word.
Problems of this movie is that they do a lot of things where you're supposed to really care about like a character dying. People do die in this movie. You care.
Yeah, so hey, we just met.
We just met, and also they don't. Sometimes like there's one character in this movie that dies, but then all the stuff that you need to know about this character to care about them happens after they die. So that's like I'm like somebody in the edit room should have been like, shouldn't those scenes come before? Because a death doesn't hit you the way the filmmaker probably intended to. You don't connect with that moment. And then that's the theme in this movie. Like, they don't have enough time to set up the characters to make the audience care enough about them, so that when something happens to them or they do something significant, it doesn't hit you the same way emotionally because you're not as emotionally invested. It's sort of like the thing that sometimes those DC movies early on in the DCU got, criticized for, is that they should have done like solo movies, like what Marvel did in their original Phase 1, is they had individual movies and then they did the Avengers, so a lot of that character development work, that groundwork was laid out before they got to the... I mean, you don't have to do that. Like, if you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, like, it's a 4-hour movie or more than that, but he has enough runtime to introduce 3 new characters and for us to make them care about it. You just need 2 or 3 well-done scenes to really be invested in a character. But in this movie, it struggles with both having too many characters to do that for, and then also the way that whenever they do give you background on characters for us to be able to care about them, they do it like in a way where you're like, well, that moment already happened, and now I'm supposed to care about it, or they don't do enough. I can go into all kinds of spoilers. I try to limit the amount of spoilers I'm giving out here, but I feel like this is a topic that can have its own entire hour-long review.
Yeah. I will say, generally, I am not a fan of ensemble casts that are full of celebrities. Unpopular opinion, wasn't crazy about Saving Private Ryan because I just felt, I know, it's blasphemous, but...
this Tom Hanks thing,
well,
we're going back
I
to
am
this?
not a Tom Hanks fan. Everybody knows that.
Gosh.
Oh my god.
Even, let me
He's
just...
not even looking at you anymore.
I can't.
You don't have to. Everybody turn away. I'm going to get real. It bugs me when you're watching a movie and there's like what I call the cameo gaze, which is like I'm in a scene and then I look at the camera and it's, by the way, it's Andrew Frankel. Not sure if you noticed. And then they get back into the scene. I hate that. And when I'm watching a war movie or I'm watching anything, and it's like, all right, you just took me out of it. And when it's an ensemble cast, it's always, by the way, it's me. I'm running onto the shores of Normandy, and it's Andrew Frankel. It's like, dude, I want to watch the movie. I want to be there. I don't want to. You've put me back in the theater.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that.
Yeah, it's this movie. At times, it loses your interest, and that's when I was like, I found myself It's never a good sign when you watch a movie and you go to like check your phone or your watch for time. Because that means you're getting restless and bored. And to me, like that, there's a lot in this movie to like. There's a lot of potential. Like a lot of reviewers are saying that this is a movie that had a lot of potential and there's a lot of good ingredients. It's just the execution was bad and they could have done way better with what they had. And I just feel like that is true in many ways because this movie at times felt like a bad X-Men movie. But even some of the worst X-Men movies didn't have some of the pacing and editing issues. Like downright story logic issues of how the characters interact and stuff. It's mind-boggling to me that MCU put out a movie like this. Usually their quality control work is so good that they catch this stuff and they do reshoots or something to that effect. But in this case, and to me, that's why what I'm wondering is where does the blame lie? It's probably a combination of like, the producers who were in charge of the film, but also like obviously the director and who got how much freedom and it feels like this was also the wrong fit for Chloe Zhao as a director because as a director, Chloe Zhao's strengths are to basically do movies where she's focusing on, one character or a couple of characters and does like these intimate character studies. Whereas this movie is the exact opposite of that. So I just felt like even though she's the one who pitched this movie to Marvel, like, she's the one who pitched it to Kevin Feige and he loved the pitch. But to me, ultimately, it's a movie that just falls short of expectations in many ways. I'm sure they'll do sequels. I put up its box office earlier, and if you look at the box office numbers, it's starting out really strong. I mean, usually Marvel movies start out strong because they have a lot of money in the bank when it comes down to audiences like excitement, and they're like, well, it's an MCU movie, I gotta go check it out. But ultimately, if it falls off in the second weekend drastically, that's, long term is going to determine, the audience interest. Because when you look at the out of theater reactions from audiences, they've been pretty mediocre, and obviously the critic score is pretty low. So it looks like, while the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is relatively high, people in general, like walking out of theaters, are like the cinema score is like the lowest that it's got any Marvel movies have had, I think, either ever or in a long time. Like usually Marvel movies don't get any lower than like a B plus. This movie got a B. So it's definitely struggling in terms of word of mouth, and I think that's going to have an effect on its long-term box office potential.
I was just looking up Chloe Zhao. She just did Nomadland. And that was her Academy
She's a
Award
reigning
movie.
best director at the Oscars.
Yeah, she cleaned up with that. It is a weird choice for a Marvel movie.
It is true. I mean, I really like the idea of them going with a director of this caliber. Marvel, I don't think Marvel has ever had a director who was like the best director, Oscar winner director movie, or especially certainly not like done it recently. Well, I mean, I don't think they've ever had a best Oscar winning best director direct a movie for them.
No, they're very good about doing like indie directors and like giving people, like, nobody really, like, James Gunn definitely had a career, but like he wasn't that big.
He was like an indie guy, right? Like, I mean, a lot of his movies weren't
very
necessarily
big indie guy.
And I'll be honest with you, Chloe Zhao's Nomadland was basically an indie movie. It just happened to be so good that it won an Oscar, right? So she's also in the same ilk. Like, from that standpoint, you understand the decision that they made to bring her in isn't out of line with what Marvel usually does. I just felt like whereas James Gunn was given Guardians of the Galaxy, or he chose to do Guardians of the Galaxy, that played to his strengths because he's really great at like character relationships and like those underdog stories, whereas I think Chloe Zhao is good with those intimate stories where there's a small cast and she can really kind of focus and meander. Like, this movie meanders a lot, which in a Chloe Zhao movie usually is a good thing. But in this movie, it's not, because it's the kind of movie where you expect things to keep moving. You have a lot of ground to cover, and that's part of the pacing issues.
Here's my last question on this, and that's, if it's MCU, there's probably going to be a sequel. There's probably going to be a follow-up. If somebody else directs it, if it's well, actually, let's just start there. Would you see a sequel? And what would it take for you to see a sequel to this movie?
A sequel to this movie.
More celebrities?
I gotta be honest. A sequel to this movie, for me, it's gonna definitely happen. They're gonna do a sequel. I mean, it's most like, and if they don't do a sequel, these characters will definitely show up in other Marvel projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they show up in other Marvel projects, I don't know, whoever's directing that, I hope they do a good job. But if they do a sequel, I feel like this is the kind of movie that needs a director who's experienced doing big budget movies with a lot of, like, with a big cast. Like, I'll be completely honest, walking out of the movie theater, I was telling my brother, I'm like, it's probably an extreme, extreme choice for me to pick this guy, but I really think Michael Bay would have done a better job with this movie than Chloe Zhao did. And for me to make that comparison, that hopefully tells you just what I thought about this movie. Like, for this movie to be as, like, for me to have that low an opinion of this movie that I'm saying Michael Bay would have done a better job, that hopefully is an indication of, like, just how much I think this movie fumbled with in so many respects. Again, the trailer looked fantastic. Some of the cinematography here is good, but a lot of it is just golden hour shots and, very fundamentally well done cinematography. But usually cinematography, that's good cinematography, but great cinematography forwards the story. And then this movie, cinematography didn't help it at all. The deviants were, like, a lot of critics are saying the deviants as, like, the villains of this movie were a wasted opportunity because they were underdeveloped. And this movie also, basically, it's a combination of Eternals going and having a civil war amongst themselves, but then the deviants are also there. And at one point, like, you were given clear reasons to like the deviants more because they're the ones who have been apparently, because you find out that the Eternals are actually not truly the good people in this situation, and so the deviants were sort of taken advantage of, or the Eternals were told by the Celestials that the deviants are really, really bad, but all the deviants were trying to do was survive and stuff. And so you're like, well, great, now I'm rooting for the deviants, but then I guess I'm still supposed to care about the Eternals, who are also fighting amongst themselves. And oh, by the way, the Celestials are still around, and they're so omnipotent that no matter what these guys do, at the end, Arisham shows up again, and he says, I will not kill, literally, he says, I will not kill you, but I'm really disappointed in you, but I will come back and check on you again and see how well you're doing. And that's a reference to how the comics play out, but totally out of context with how it was done in the comics. And to be honest, if they just straight up adapted the comic story, that would have been better. Because the way they did it in this movie was absolutely the wrong way to do it, in my opinion. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Good.
This was meant to be a quick hit, and
We turned it into Eternals 2.
Yeah.
This became like a main topic level segment. So let's move on. Of course, before we move on, I got to tell you guys, if this overall is not the worst movie I've seen all year, but it is certainly pretty close to it. But if you have seen it, jump into the comments below, let us know what you thought. Of course, like and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to us as a podcast, give us a 5-star review. We'd love to get your feedback. And with that, let's move on to our next quick hit, and hopefully this will be a quicker hit, as Roland would say. So the next quick hit is Andrew watched a different movie than mine, and he didn't go to the theaters to do it either. He checked out This Is Not a War Story, and Andrew, as the graphic here says, it's not a good movie, apparently, according to you. At least. But it is on HBO Max, so tell us
so
more.
much negativity in this episode. It's crazy.
Not planned. I went in with the best of intentions, and I always do. I always sit down and think I'm ready to be amazed, and I will say I was captivated by this movie. I was captivated by even the concept, but I started watching it thinking that I was watching a documentary. And that's partly because this is a story about war vets after they come home from war, what they do, the guilt that they're racked with, the mental anguish that they have to face. And it's an important thing to even consider because a lot of people don't. And so it shines an important light on people that matter. What's strange about it, and this is the only time I've ever had this complaint about a movie.
Yes, right outside. I apologize. I'm so sorry, Andrew.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry, I had to address that. There was like a pickup truck just revved up outside Roland's house, and it just distracted me. Anyway, you were saying, Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's we know who it is.
Oh. Well, we're gonna have a talk with him after this.
It's a GT. I'm not gonna remember those letters, but it's got a big old engine, so you can.
It's a tiny car. It's literally.
Well, clearly it's not that tiny. Anyways.
Don't they know we're podcasting?
Yeah.
So I've never had this complaint about a movie, but it almost had a documentary feel to it because the cinematography was handheld camera, somebody walking around with the camera, with the characters. And every once in a while, they break the fourth wall and they talk about how somebody's filming this. And when you have real war vets talking about their experience in the movie and actors playing war vets the performances are great, but when you're they didn't commit fully to breaking the fourth wall. They told the vets to act naturally. They did. They told their stories. But then the actors playing vets, you get these tight shots and these close-ups, and I'd be like, well, hold on a second. Nobody with the camera, unless they're a trained actor, is going to be that comfortable being this emotional in front of a camera face on. And for that, the cohesion was lost for me. Not to mention, there's a lot of talk in it. There's a lot of it starts getting political where in places it doesn't need to. But essentially, this is an anti-war statement, and it's people who are upset with a system that spat them back out into the world that it's hard to face. For that, I think it's an important thing to see and to consider. I didn't love the execution. And I found that, you could, if you're going to make something that's purely narrative, I think you would have made a better impact as actors, stationary camera, scenes set up to just feel like a movie, as opposed to a documentary that sort of blends into reality and into narrative. It was honestly, it was a confusing viewing experience. Strangely, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes by critics, and no audience score. I don't know if anybody's
How many reviews on Rotten Tomatoes?
How
from
many
critics?
reviews are there on Rotten Tomatoes? There are.
Eternals has like almost 300 now, but like
Almost
it's a movie in
300.
theaters and it's an MCU film.
So this has 28 critic reviews and 0 audience reviews.
Okay.
I was about to
yeah,
make an
doesn't
account
count.
when I saw that.
Yeah.
Then I go onto IMDb, and it's got 6 out of 10 stars. So something's up here, because even they don't agree.
Well,
It's not
wait,
a
give me the number
100%
again.
movie.
How many people from on Rotten Tomatoes Tomato Meter? How many critics reviewed it?
28.
That's way too low a number.
Still 100%.
Well, but I mean, even like a movie like Eternals, which I think it initially started off like in the 80s, but then once it got past 50 reviews, the number just kept going down. Usually the people who are most excited about. Speaking of which, this movie is on HBO Max, and it was like an acquisition by HBO Max. It was like an indie movie that somebody made, and then HBO Max acquired it. So I'm guessing this is one of those like movies that didn't have a huge following, obviously. And to just give you a sense of how much people probably know about this movie even existing, I searched up Not a War Story, and a 2017 movie came up. Because there was a movie in 2017 that came out which was not a war story, whereas this is
not a war story.
This is not a war story, right? So the title is too similar, and then for it to be on like HBO Max somewhere, I mean, which again, you found it because you were looking for something specific, or you came across it, and you were like, well, you know, like if you were on Netflix and you came across a movie that most people probably haven't heard of, but Netflix has because they haven't marketed it. It seems like this is that kind of a movie, which explains why it has so few critics who reviewed it. And those scores usually tend to skew either really bad or really good when such a small sample size is in
I'm
play.
amazed at how many movies do make it to 100%, though, which I guess we can just use this to pivot into what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
Which
Well, we
Segue,
gotta go to
baby.
Rolan Underground. Yeah.
Oh,
before we
well,
do-
let's do that first.
Never mind the segue. It was too good anyways. Let's go to my thing.
But but before we finish up this segment here, I gotta ask you, give me like a one sentence. Obviously, it's not a good movie, but what's your one sentence summary about what you thought about this movie?
It tried to break too many rules, and it shouldn't have. It could have been simpler. That's that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about Eternals. I think it tried to break too many MCU filmmaking rules, which, to be honest, like I would have thought that would be a good thing, but they didn't do a good job of doing that. Anyway, not a good movie. And we just talked about 2 movies that Andrew and I saw that neither of us enjoyed. Which kind of bums me out. I'm like, I wish we were watching better movies. It's not our fault. We were going in with. I wanted to give it the best shot possible. I was like, I really hope I enjoy this movie. I hope all the critics are like completely wrong about this, and they weren't. And it seems like you had the same experience. Those 28 odd critics.
And
really
to everyone listening, if you take anything away from this, it's not our fault.
Yeah. Also, you might have watched these movies. I mean, you might have watched Eternals, and This Is Not a War Story, or one or the other, and you might have loved them. So everybody has their own opinion, and it's all subjective when it comes to movies, right?
Everyone has an opinion, but we have a show.
There you go. We have the ability to talk down to you. No, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. No, don't back down. That's exactly why we are on this show.
Well, guys, if you watch This Is Not a War Story, or if you're interested in seeing it now that Andrew has said it's such a terrible movie, it may be so bad that you can't look away. I mean, but if so, let us, and you go check it out. Let us know what you thought about it. Leave us comments below, and obviously like and subscribe to our channel. We are doing fantastic stuff every week. Speaking of fantastic stuff, we have to move on to the latest episode of Rolan Underground. And Roland, since you're on the show today, why don't you give us a quick preview? What is in store on Rolan Underground today?
Oh, I'll tell you what. They're creepy and they're kinky. My uncle's missing a thumb and a pinky. I was trying to do something. It didn't work. It's post-Halloween. You guys are on the verge of tears.
That was depressing.
It's post-Halloween. So, of course, all of the costumes are in. And I was like, you know what? Let's look at them. I'm on Instagram anyways. Might as well, make a video out of it. So I'm just going through the costumes, giving my opinion. A lot of them are really creative and really cool, but I think I'll let Roland say the rest.
Okay.
Thank you, Roland. Let's
Thank
see what
you,
Roland
Roland.
has to say.
Yeah, it's not like anybody can see it anyways. But... Welcome to Rolan Underground, where we talk about what's happening in the world above while in my grandparents' basement. I'm your host, Mourning for a loss that was very close to me, and I don't think I can continue doing this show today if I don't address it. If you could, please take a moment of silence for what I lost. In the arms of Daniyal, we're trying to avoid a lawsuit. So here's this really bad song.
For those listening to the podcast, I shaved off my goatee. That is the joke.
Okay, enough of that. I really don't know how that song goes, except for like in the arms of an angel. But let's just keep going. It's post-Halloween, so I thought it'd be fun if we do a little information dive. Kind of. We're gonna look at celebrity costumes. Just costumes in general. This is the last thing you're gonna hear from me for Halloween. I promise. No, I don't. So let's just get into it. These are the first times I've seen any of these. Alright, first up we have Zoe Kravitz and Channing Tatum. Are they together? I don't know, but they look really good. Dang, Channing Tatum looks awesome. That's a great movie, fantastic. I did see this. This looks awesome. Chloe Bailey as Lola from Shark Tale. She's supposed to be like the Little Mermaid, whenever that movie's supposed to come out. Drew Barrymore as Drew Barrymore. Okay, alright, I like it. Yeah, it's funny. No, it's cool, it's a callback. It's nice. Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker as Sid and Nancy. I love it. Honestly, if I had to pick a Kardashian, it'd be none of them. But Kourtney, if I actually had to. Also, they seem cool. Like, I don't really know shit about them, but I just, from a distance, I think they look dope. I saw this, Jamie Lee Curtis as Psycho's Marion Crane. As we all know, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom was Marion Crane. Rihanna as Gunna. Who the fuck is Gunna? I don't really know what it is, but like that looks cool. I think it's very accurate. Oh dang. Megan Thee Stallion as Pinhead. This is definitely awoken something. And we're gonna go past this. She looks amazing. Doja Cat as Princess Kita from I never saw it. I just saw like pictures and stuff. This looks good. I love this. This looks dope. Hayley Kiyoko as 067 from Squid Game. Believe it or not, I haven't watched Squid Game. I just really haven't had time. I've been doing a lot of stuff. It seems cool, and I've heard a lot of awesome things about it. This looks dope. She was in Scooby-Doo. Lizzo as Baby Yoda. It looks great, just very scary. But I dig it. I respect it. I think that's really cool. Harry Styles as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I'll let him do him, Olivia Rodrigo as Michelle Pfeiffer in Scarface. This is cool. I like this. This is nice. And it looks like her friend is Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I think that's dope. Steve Buscemi. Oh my gosh! Steve Buscemi went as a fellow teen from that SNL skit. No, it wasn't SNL. I think it was like 30 Rock. Anyways, it was from New York. But that's so cool. I love that. And he's like with people. I love Steve Buscemi. He's really such an underrated actor and just an amazing guy. Alright, we have Sophie Turner, Joe Jonas, and Olivia DeJonge. I have no idea who that is. As Isabella, Apollo, and Lizzie from the Lizzie McGuire movie. I have a cousin that really likes the Lizzie McGuire movie. Sarah Michelle. Ah, that's great. Sarah and Freddie Prinze Jr. as Baby and Johnny from Dirty Dancing. Another Scooby-Doo thing. That's amazing. I love that. That's so cute. Paris Hilton as Cinderella, because she knows that story so well. Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom as Syringe and a doctor. That's alright, that's cool. I like that a lot. A little narcissistic to put Katy Perry in big letters. Cardi B is Morticia Adams. Alright, I like it. Very much vampire. Very cool, very cool. Lil Nas X as Voldemort's. Okay. Oh, and also he was what was his name? He was like the popular kid from Ned Declassified. That's cool. I think that's funny. I don't know. I like it. Haley Road Baldwin Bieber. Is that her name? As Britney Spears? Cool. I don't know. It's whatever. LeBron James as Freddy Krueger. I saw this. I thought this was so dope. This is cool. This is nice. Nina Dobrev. Shaun White. Oh my gosh. I haven't heard of Shaun White since that last episode we did. And Adam Devine as the Queen's Gambit. Weird trio. Would not imagine them being friends. That's insane. Sorry, Justice as a skeleton. Chanel Monet as... Oh! Okay. That's cool. I like that. As the Grinch. It's scary. Very scary, but very cool. I like that. Kendall Jenner as Mars Attacks. That's cool. Say what you want about Kendall Jenner, but like that's actually a really cool costume. I like that a lot. Ariana Grande as Creature from the Black Lagoon. Dude, you gotta give these people credit. A lot of these people just go all out with these insane costumes. My goodness. That is... I like the filter she has on it. Taylor Swift is a squirrel. I mean, the head kind of gives it... It's just like you in a onesie. I mean, that's fine. I guess that's... I don't know. I feel like it's just a little... It's whatever. You know what? You do you. I said we were gonna have fun for Halloween, so... Chica as Dwight Schrute. That's a... I don't know if the knife was necessary. Also, I have no idea who Chica is. I don't really listen to a lot of, like, modern hip-hop, so Amy Schumer as a tampon. Okay. I didn't know she was still... Okay. Adam Rippon as Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend. Alright, we're just gonna... Yeah. Megan Stalter. Why are there so many people? I don't know. I don't know who these people are. As Jennifer Coolidge, I like the costume. I think the costume is very dope. Mary Beth Barone and Benito Skinner as Kravis. What is Kravis? What the hell is Kravis? May we all hope to become horny cowboys as Travis. Oh, it's Travis Barker and Kourtney Kardashian. Had no idea. Alright, so that one is done. Let's just go to this next one. Alright, seen it. Yeah, seen it. And... Alright, The Weeknd is dressed as Don Corleone from The Godfather. And the makeup looks fantastic. It looks insane. He looks just like him. You know, I don't think the color thing matters. I'm just gonna play it safe and not touch that. I think that's the best case scenario for this. I don't think I'm gonna explore anymore. So that's my video. If you guys had a really cool Halloween costume, share them. You know, we have an Instagram. Just tag us. Be like @OhSoCurious. #OhSoCurious. Or find me on Instagram. I have a weird name. I'm sure you can find me pretty easily. And just DM me and be like, hey, do check out this Halloween costume. And I'll probably reply. It was fun to do. I'll see you next time.
And we are back. So that was Rolan Underground, and now, as you can tell, here is Rolan Underground, and with him is me and Andrew. So we're talking about... There's a theme in this show. We spend a lot of time in the quick hits talking about movie reviews, and that's kind of a lot of what we do. But we reviewed 2 movies. I reviewed Eternals. Andrew reviewed This Is Not a War Story. Nothing to do with Not a War Story from 2017. No correlation. But we were also talking about Rotten Tomatoes scores. We were talking about how critics receive these movies versus how audiences receive these movies, discrepancies there. And in general, what is Rotten Tomatoes is kind of been a topic of discussion in recent times because it's become a bigger and bigger part of pop culture and how people shape their opinion on the movie, whether they've seen it or even after the fact. Like you go to watch a movie, you like it, you don't like it, or sometimes you're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of on the fence. But then you go to a site like Rotten Tomatoes and you see what everybody's talking about. And some people look at the audience reviews, some people look at the tomato meter, some people do both. But in general, we wanted to do a treatise on Rotten Tomatoes, which is basically we wanted to kind of do a deep analysis of what is Rotten Tomatoes, how does Rotten Tomatoes work, and how does it help shape our, and it's actually not how, but also in general, it does help shape our opinion on movies, but we want to pose the question, is that a good thing? And I guess that would depend on how Rotten Tomatoes works, what it is as a platform, and maybe what it was intended to be versus what it has become. All of these questions we're going to talk about. But to kick things off, Andrew, I'd like to know from you, and you, so just to give it back some background, I'm on the East Coast. I'm based out of Connecticut. Roland's down in Carolina. So we're both on like one side of the country, but Andrew is like in Culver City, right? Am I correct?
No, I'm in Studio City.
Studio City. Okay. You're in LA, basically.
I'm in LA.
You're in LA. You're in LA County. So you are much closer to Hollywood proper, whatever that means. Nowadays, Hollywood is sort of, everywhere because
Hollywood's a
production
cloud.
happens
It's in the cloud.
in the clouds. But you're basically as close to Hollywood land as any of us. So tell me, like, your thoughts on Rotten Tomatoes, what it is, how it works, whether that's a good thing or not.
Well, I don't know if my geographic location gives me any authority on it, but I will say that as somebody who grew up with Rotten Tomatoes, I would always go to the site before I would, try to watch a movie or see a movie, rent a movie, going back that far. And, at first I used to think, oh, well, I can trust this. Like, this is what is actually, it became the authority on what a good movie is. And I used to look at that and it would affect my choices. I would say, this didn't do well with critics, or I'd say, well, people like it or people don't like it. But, as you might expect from me personally, I have delicate tastes. I have special tastes. And so what I started doing, the way I've been using it, is if I see a consensus on Rotten Tomatoes, I just assume it's the opposite. Because generally,
That's one way of
did.
looking at it.
That's an interesting way to go with life. But
not life. It's really just movie choices. But maybe I'm going for different things. I want different things out of a movie than critics are looking at it for. I like a good story. I care about good acting performances. I'm not a huge action guy. And when you have critics looking at these things, it's, well, I'm an expert in movies, and so I'll tell you if this is a good film. It's like, I'm not a film student. I'm an audience member. I want to watch this, and I want to enjoy what I'm watching. Is it good? Is it compelling? Is it innovative? Is it a story I haven't heard before? Is really what I like in a movie. And most often I've seen the story. It's just different actors, different setting.
that's fair.
Yeah, so that's how I use it.
Yeah. So that's exactly, well, not exactly, but it's very different from, like, say I use the Rotten Tomatoes, because I go to Rotten Tomatoes and I look at the score and I sort of use it as like a reference. It's sort of, to me, Rotten Tomatoes is like the Wikipedia of doing research for like a research paper, if you will, right? You want to use it as a starting point, but you never want to use that as your primary source to inform your opinion.
No, and there's plenty of sites that offer their opinion on movies. It's just somehow this got a monopoly on it.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at the way, and I've got it on screen, like the way the tomato meter, what is a tomato meter and how it works, we were talking about this before we came on air for this segment.
Because it's not as straightforward as it purports to be. It's not that
right. It's a very, what I was gonna say is it's a very reductive way to judge a movie. Because
so how does it work?
Movie, as any piece of art, it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? As we say about art, and movies are a form of art. But the way Rotten Tomatoes does things is sort of tries to apply a black and white reductive figure, which is the tomato meter score, to movies. And as you can see on screen right now, and if you're listening to this, a fresh score is 60% or higher. A rotten score is 59% or lower. A certified fresh has a bunch of things attached to it, as in they judge that differently. They assess the certified fresh score differently based on if it's a wide release movie, a limited release movie, or a TV show. So you need a certain amount of reviews for it to be given a certified fresh rating, and the tomato meter score also has to be higher than 75%, and it has to have like 5 reviews from top critics who are usually people like from RogerEbert.com or like the well reputable outlets like the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, New York Times, the New Yorker, things of that nature, the Los Angeles Times. And the audience score is sort of like the second component to it. It's separate from the tomato meter, which is all about the critics really. But then the audience score is percentage of users who rate a movie or TV show positively. But when it comes down to it, what does positively mean, right? Because you look at a percentage and you assume on a scale of 100, people think if it's 86, it's 4 out of 5. If it's 45, it's like 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's a very reductive way of looking at things. Whereas if you break down what that actually means on the website, like I'll just pull up the Eternals because we were talking about it earlier in the show. Rotten Tomatoes, the way the site works is it takes reviews from critics, from in this case let's talk about just the critics, and if you review it better than average, then that's a favorable review, which is like so like say on a scale of 1 to 5, if it's 3 stars or higher, which again, not everybody rates it out of 5 stars. Some people do it out of 4, some out of 5. Some people give it a letter grade, like A+. So then they have to somehow matriculate that into a percentage number. And if it was a positive review, that's the number that's compared with the negative review. And then they say, okay, if you got 4 positive reviews and 6 negative reviews, that equals to a 40% score because only 40% of people gave it a positive review. Whereas the negative reviewers might have said, oh, there's a lot of good things about this movie, but in general, I thought it was a bad movie. So because reviews are also so subjective, to take that subjective information and then kind of cut it down into this black and white number, I think is often it often plays against, not in favor, but against the movie, especially movies that tend to take a lot of risks and much like say Eternals took a lot of risks, but I don't think it delivered. But movies that tend to capture the cultural zeitgeist, like the big blockbusters, they either are hugely, it seems to me like the negative scores usually hit the headlines more than the positive scores. When a movie's doing really well on Rotten Tomatoes, people are like, oh, it's doing really well, fantastic, one more reason for me to go see this movie. But when the movie
that's something I started seeing is like in trailers, they would actually say like certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
I
nobody likes to talk about it when it's not doing well because it's bad PR. But like that's when it's making the headlines. Like Eternals, for example, is a big deal to people that it's the first negatively rated Rotten Tomatoes movie.
Yeah.
Or like when DCU's earlier movies like Batman vs Superman got like terrible. I'm like, is it really that bad that movie got like a 28% or something on Rotten Tomatoes? Because it feels like there's groupthink that happens with these reviews sometimes, and then it skews like in one extreme or the other. Like,
or if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the comedy world, now there's these big divergence, big discrepancies between the audience score and the critic score, and for some of the critic scores, you're wondering how could they think, something like Hannah Gadsby's Nanette, how is that a perfect comedy special? I watched it. I didn't laugh. You look at Dave Chappelle's latest special, which audiences absolutely loved, but it was panned by the critics. And you have to start wondering...
And of course it created all that controversy too.
Tons of controversy. And maybe controversy is really just marketing. That's something that, they say that you are like 5 or 6 more times likely to click on something if the title makes you angry.
That's what basically YouTube works on. It's like clickbait, right? That's the definition of clickbait.
Honestly, yes.
And I can't help but wonder, because everything's marketing these days. Critics are paid to give a certain review if they're well known. Marketing happens through all different kinds of channels. If it's anti-marketing, like with Ghostbusters, where it got such horrible reviews. The 2016 Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Or 2017.
Didn't you
We'll
do a
fact check
story
that
on it?
later.
Came out
But
a few years ago.
it was
Yeah.
the bad one.
The bad
Okay.
one, yeah.
It was panned by audiences and critics alike, and it just kept getting put out there, and everybody was talking about how horrible this thing is. But it was negative marketing. It was a negative marketing campaign. I can't
They just
help
didn't.
but think
They didn't catch
that this
on
is
to the
also
public
that.
opinion, right? Sometimes studios tend to do well when they're like, "There's something really good going on here, positive or negative. Let's roll with
Yeah.
it." Sometimes they're just like,
No such thing as bad press.
right,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're tone deaf in the sense that they will pick up the wrong thing, and you're like, "Don't talk about that. No.
Yeah.
Just let it go." But they latch onto the wrong thing, and I feel like that's what happened with Ghostbusters.
It could be, but I'm skeptical of the whole arrangement because, again, at the end of the day, this website for some reason has people's attention, and once
Well, it's
you
got a
have people's
negative
attention,
connotation, and like you say, people are attracted to negative. The title
That's
is
for
called
sure.
Rotten Tomato. Already,
know.
you're like, this can't be good. It's the whole thing is a movie is bad unless it's proven good.
yeah,
That's the entirety of what this site is. It seems.
Yeah. I mean, look at all these. These are the best rated movies of 2021 that I've got pulled up. Now, one of the things I did want to kind of tackle in this conversation is, in recent times, there's been conversation out on in the general sphere of social media and amongst people, word of mouth and all that. That critic reviews tend to be tended to veer farther and further off of what audience reviews are. Like, audience reactions tend to be very different than critic
Yeah.
reactions. And when I was doing some research on, and I was just like looking at it here, and I pulled up this list and another list, and I was just like, all right, let me think of a random movie. I'll search it up and see what its score is for critics versus audience. More often than not, they tend to be not that far apart. And when I say not that far apart, they could be 5, 10, 15% apart, maybe 20% apart at most. But it's very rare to see like 30, 40% one way, the audience goes one way and the critics go the other way. So that happens, that's obviously happening with the movie Eternals. But like, I just like randomly picking out one movie here, and now it gives me a server error. Well, that's not fun. Well, it's not working. But in general, oh, that's why it's not working. It wants me to anyway, it's not cooperating. But what I found, and more often than not, critics and audiences tend to be leaning in the same direction, but every once in a while they're not. However, the reason why that the theory tends to get floated a lot, that audiences and critics are usually increasingly far apart on Rotten Tomatoes in terms of what they think on movies. I think that happens mostly on those bigger films that tend to capture everybody's attention. And so people look, humans have a tendency to like take the information that's the most relevant to us and like run with it and assume that it applies to everything.
yeah.
Whereas for us, we might be living in our like little feedback loop or our little bubble, and all you need is one or two examples to the contrary to like kind of discredit your theory, if you will. But in general, it seems like those two scores tend to line up well. So it's not like critics are out of touch, but on some of those big movies, it's like the fandoms are like they're so biased to the property of the movie that they tend to give it an overly positive review than maybe what the movie deserved, but the critics might be giving it a more.
Well, so
like,
here's my next bone to pick.
Yeah.
Is who are the critics? Who are these people, and why are they the tastemakers?
Good question.
And then B, this is what happened with Yelp. People, they started gaining followings on Yelp. Suddenly, oh, I'm a tastemaker myself. I can review restaurants, and I can say, I'll review you on Yelp, and now, that's going to be, I'm going to affect your business, and people are going to start caring what I think. And I have to ask you, because this isn't the case for me, do you have accounts on Rotten Tomatoes where you can review? And who are the people who actually have accounts, who feel like their opinions matter enough that they're going to affect the score? Is it really democratic? Are people actually being represented here?
Well, are you
feel-
are you asking about the audience or the critics?
I'm talking about the audience score. Yeah. Are you part of the audience score, or do you just click on it and see? Because that's how I use it. I just go, there it is. That's what audiences think. But you can sign up for an account and you can rate movies.
Oh, anybody can. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of like in recent times like review bombing, right? That happens. Like people just create because anybody can. They do a certain amount of verification work, so it's not like you
Sure.
could just create. But it doesn't go much further beyond than verify your email and blah blah blah. So like you need a real email address. But beyond that, there's no other real requirements. You could be anybody.
I can't think that anybody who thinks that their opinion's worth something on that website is probably somebody who thinks of themselves as like a movie buff or, you know, a film student.
Yeah.
My opinions matter. My review matters. Look at my review. I reviewed this movie. It's not the guy that you see at work on Tuesdays. You know, it's
Right. Yeah.
it's not people.
I mean, that's the thing
not
with
just
these
regular
audience.
people.
Here's the thing. I gotta be honest with you. When I first, however, it was a number of years ago. I was like, all right, you know what? This movie, I'm gonna give it a review on Rotten Tomatoes. So I had to create an account, and it was a process. I think they make it just difficult enough to discourage people, but obviously, if you're motivated enough, you can spend time, you know, and go through the whole process. And again, like I said, there's not a whole lot of barrier to entry. So I created an account, but then it's like, I'm not the kind of person who's usually so passionate about movies. Like even the movies that I really love, I'm like, I barely have time. I barely care enough to write about it on like regular social media that I'm gonna go to Rotten Tomatoes and type out paragraphs and hit submit and hope they approve it, and then it shows up on the website and it becomes a part of. Like people really have to be committed to this. So that already is giving you a smaller qualified chunk of the audience that's submitting the reviews. And then when it comes to those critic reviews nowadays, there's a lot more of those smaller indie, which again, I think, you know, with the internet being what it is today versus in the past, where only people who used to do like, they were full-time critics working for these big newspapers used to do reviews. Nowadays, you have smaller websites, like more independent kind of outlets, and it's democratized in a certain way. But the downside of that is you get reviews from more people, but also probably a greater variation in the qualifications of you know, the people who are reviewing this. Like on one end of the spectrum, like the top critics, as they call them on Rotten Tomatoes, might be people who have been doing this for many years, decades, or are now working for reputable outlets where you really have to be the cream of the crop to even have the job and no less like stay in the job. And you know, you have an editor above you who's looking at your stuff and making sure that you're doing a good job with everything you put out. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you might be running an indie website and you might be one or two people, and you might have, you know, basically enough credentials to get considered as a critic on Rotten Tomatoes, and now your review's going up there. And when it comes to that tomato meter looks at your review and the top critic review equally. Like they don't weigh those reviews. They just say, oh, there's at least 5 top critic reviews, and the movie's rated over 75% certified fresh. But most movies tend to get more than 5 top critics reviewing it, because if it's a big enough of a movie, enough of those full-time critics working at those major outlets do that. But then for these movies like that are like these blockbusters that get over 300 views, I can almost guarantee you that like not even less than half of those are from critics who you would be like, oh, you know, the Hollywood Reporter or the Guardian or like, you know, some reputable outlets. That's where it's coming from. Roger Ebert. It's most of those are coming from like these like I'll just give you an example. Like I pulled it up for The Suicide Squad, which was, you know, for a James Gunn movie, came out earlier this year. Look at this. There's top critic, NPR. Okay, I can trust that. DamianMichaelMovies.com. Somehow he's a top critic. I don't know who the heck that is. Rolling Stone. Okay. And sometimes, I'm not saying like, hey, look at the outlet. Sometimes these people, they might have been working for a bigger outlet before, and now they're working on their own independent thing.
Sure.
So, but you got to know your stuff, right? To know who these people are. Like Film Frenzy, Matt Brunson. I don't know who that guy is, and I don't know what Film Frenzy is. Critically acclaimed podcast. Like, oh my God, how generic is that? You know?
Yeah.
Like, versus, like, I gave you the example, I mean, Boston Globe. I know what Boston Globe is. It's really like top critics, 62. 359 all critics. Top critics, 62. Fresh, 323. Rotten, 36. So only 62 of these 359 reviewers were considered top critics. That's a very small percentage. So for that number to look at that number, I mean, you might have had a terrible experience watching this movie, but the 90%. So you might be looking at the 90% certified fresh and be like, I have no idea what they were thinking, but to me, it doesn't make any sense. And what ends up happening as a byproduct of Rotten Tomatoes being such a dominant part of our conversation is much like, in social media, people get attacked on social media and bullied for having an opinion that's counter to the popular. And when Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of people who are like, if it's like a Marvel movie, or if it's especially like the superhero movies, DC movie, Marvel movie, whatever, if you really love a movie and you go start defending it and attacking people who maybe didn't like it, and then you start like citing, oh, well, Rotten Tomatoes is like, it's so great, so clearly everybody loved it. Why do you hate it? I feel like that's where
I hate when people do that. They take themselves
Yeah.
way too seriously. They get in that top market, and it ruins the whole thing. It's entertainment. You're supposed to enjoy it, have fun. You don't like it, watch something else. I was before this. I was looking at like Rotten Tomato flops that are actual cult classics, and I was stunned. Hook, Robin Williams, where he's Peter Pan. Love that movie. One of my favorite childhood films. Its Rotten Tomato score, 30%.
Wow.
What else? Super Troopers, I think it was like 35%. Final Destination, 34%.
Wow.
Ace
Rotten
Ventura.
Tomatoes for Hook is 29%.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's so many where it's like, what do you want? Clearly, this is just a dumb, enjoyable thing that's supposed to be lighthearted and nice. Where do you get off being so mean?
And you know what? One of the things about this is that's so unbalanced is, like, for example, there's never going to be anywhere close to as many people reviewing on the critic side as there are on the audience side. And as if you know anything about math, just general math, you know that when you add up more numbers and divide them to get an average, the more sets of values you have, the less each individual value is going to affect the average score. So for a movie like Avengers, let's say Avengers Endgame, which for a short while was the highest grossing movie of all time and ever at the box office, and it overtaking Avatar, and then Avatar got another re-release and took it over again. But for a movie that was basically the biggest movie that has come out in the last, 10 years, it's got 547 tomato critic reviews on there, which is insane. Like, usually even superhero movies have, like, on the high end, they tend to stay in the mid 300s. This had 547 critics, so it was a high number for critic side. But the audience score, there's more than 50,000 people. And so to me, when you see a number where more than 50,000 people reviewed it, and it still come out at an average of 90, that to me speaks volumes more versus 547 critics and that score being 94. Because that means that movie had to withstand 50,000 audience scores or more than that to get to
And
the
you don't
90%.
get those numbers immediately. Like, if you Google a film, it'll say the percentage of critics, like what these critics are really saying. You don't say how many critics are there. You don't see the the audience score. You have to do like your actual research to find these mass amount.
Exactly. I mean, you look at these, and this is kind of one, let's kind of jump over to this part of the conversation where, so we have already talked about how it's a very reductive way to review movies. Like, these Rotten Tomato scores, like, they take art, like, art is very subjective, and usually it's hard to assign a number value. Like, you don't see, when you don't go to an art gallery and basically you go look at a painting, and then you get in line, and then they say, all right, what do you rate it? And then you pull up your scorecard with a big 9 or a 6.
No,
Like,
but that's a
usually
website
write
that
a
should
review.
definitely exist.
Oh, I'm sure they are. But in general, like, you write a review, you say, you have your pros, and then you basically put down many paragraphs, like 1,000 words, if you will, into a review, which is what all of these reviewers do. And I feel like it does them a disservice when they take, I don't know, a 2,000 word 1,000-word review, and they take a small chunk of it to highlight here, which may not be, well, they do their best to make sure that that's indicative of the entire review, but what they do in terms of Rotten Tomatoes score is 3.5 out of 4 becomes like, I don't know, they probably say, all right, what is 3.5 out of 4 in percentage out of 100? And then they take another person's score, 3.5 out of 5, what is that in a percentage out of 100? And at 3.5, even those scores are not in, if you read the whole review, different people might have liked different things about the movie, and or they might have hated the whole thing, but might have liked one thing so much that they gave it a high score.
Yeah.
People are not very good at, like, it's kind of hard for you to look at a movie and say, I loved it so much that I'm gonna call it a 3 out of 5.
No, I think
felt like
I
a
think
2
that
out of
pretty
5.
much that pretty much solidifies it. Like it's hard to quantify good or
Right.
bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And Rotten Tomatoes to me takes it to an. I feel like we're bashing Rotten Tomatoes. That's not our intention. We're just talking about what Rotten Tomatoes is as a service, and then what its value is to society, I suppose. But Rotten Tomatoes takes things to such an extreme by it's. We have clearly established that, like you said, Andrew, it's hard to quantify opinion in general, but no less opinion about a form of art that everybody reacts to and receives differently.
And
And then Rotten
yes,
Tomatoes takes that and quantify it to the nth degree by
and
giving you a
yet,
percentage
like
score by
we
averaging
look
it
at
out.
it, we consult it, and we
Yeah.
look at the number, and as hard as it is to quantify good or bad, we see that they've done it to some extent, and we go, well, that's a number that must be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, this is kind of a weird segue, but I thought this was so funny because Rotten Tomatoes is a company. They hear what people are saying, they hear the complaints and stuff like that, and there's this podcast called Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. It's a podcast where they go through like all the bad things, and it's from Rotten Tomatoes. Like Rotten Tomatoes made this, and like the advertisement, the commercial for it is, "We heard you, and we agree. We are wrong."
It's a very self-aware thing that they do because they know that it's controversial.
Like you kind of want to be upset, but you're like, "That's really
it's
good."
so
All right.
clever. It's
Like,
clever marketing.
I can
Yeah.
still be upset at that.
Yeah,
Because
I tried
at the
listening
end
to
of the
that
day,
one time.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
what that says is we've done this, we were wrong, and we hear you. Continue consuming our content, and now you have the knowledge that we understand that we're wrong, but we're not going to change anything.
Exactly.
at least we admitted to it, you know?
Like it's like I struggle with that for a little bit, and I even tried out the podcast, and they do videos on, and I've checked them out on YouTube and stuff, and after a while I was just like, no, you just want me to spend more time with you guys, and that's kind of the opposite of what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, anyway.
So, I guess to wrap this up. would you like to give give Rotten Tomatoes a score? Would you like to review Rotten Tomatoes?
Oh,
We can
Rotten
average ours
Tomatoes.
together and see what it comes out to be.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, hey, Roland, you start.
Yeah.
are we just?
Just
Why do you always put me on the spot? Be like, you know what?
Just give us a number out
Okay.
of 100.
I'm gonna say 7 out of 10. I mainly blame Google for everything. So
7 out of 10. Okay.
I don't like to be mean. I like to
That's
enjoy
fine.
things.
I
I'm
love
not
to
gonna
be
give it a
mean.
bad score. As much as I might get angry with it, I can't give it a bad score.
To keep things inconsistent, I'm gonna give it a C minus.
Oh god.
I'm gonna give Rotten Tomatoes 3 out of 6.
Okay.
3.
So if we
okay.
average that together, that comes out
It's my
to.
patented 6-star scoring system. and I
Let's
think it's
do
3 out of
some
6.
math.
I think that's like 55%.
3 out of 6 is like 50%.
Three.
Yeah.
You said 3 out of 6.
I said 3 out of 6. What did Roland say? 7 out of 10?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
you did give it a letter grade, right?
Yeah. Well, a
Andrew,
C
yeah.
minus is a 70. So you said
Yeah.
7. We gave it the same score. Mine just sounds meaner.
Yeah.
It actually does. Like, that's another thing. Like, somebody gives it a C, you're like, oh wow, that's really bad. Versus
All right. That's 63%. That's still certified fresh.
That's
Just
well,
that's
we're
barely.
missing Brian and Mags' score. I'm sure that
Well, that's all the reviews we have right now. So,
so take it or
until
leave
there are
it.
more reviews, that's the score.
So we gave Rotten Tomatoes a 63% score. Definitely not enough to be certified fresh.
It's over 60.
Yeah.
Let's
Fresh.
I had this pulled up. Let me take a look. What would this equal to in Rotten Tomatoes world? It would equal to, let's take a look. So if it was lower than 60, it would be rotten. So it's
okay. Let's rephrase. It's not rotten. It's fresh.
It's
just
fresh.
it's
Yeah.
like 3 days old fresh.
It's not. It's just fresh enough.
All right.
All right. Well, that's gonna wrap up. I mean, we can have this conversation for literally days because there's so much to talk about, and it's such a wide-reaching conversation. But that was our treatise on Rotten Tomatoes, and it helps shape our opinion on movies. But we asked the question: is that a good thing? It's kind of hard to answer that with a yes or no, and that's kind of like the inherently the nature of the conversation as a whole. We're trying not to quantify opinion. We're trying to tell you like how reductive this whole thing is. Anyway, if you thought that conversation was engaging, let us know in the comments below. Tell us what you think about Rotten Tomatoes. It's clearly something that divides opinion. It does it all the time. Every time a new movie comes out, people say, "Oh, what's the Rotten Tomatoes score?"
Yeah.
Oh, and then you look at the ads, and sometimes studios are touting that it's certified fresh in Rotten Tomatoes, and now certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
What happened to thumbs? We used to give movies thumbs.
Thumbs.
Two
Oh,
thumbs
streaming
up.
services do that. They don't do star ratings anymore. Netflix started that, and now
Yeah.
everybody's doing it.
Because of
Thumbs
Amy
up,
Schumer.
thumbs down. It reminds me of that one segment from WWE back in the day when Evolution broke up, and Triple H was giving the thumbs up to Randy Orton, who was on the shoulders of Batista, and then he turns it down, and then Batista just drops. Okay. I'm a wrestling nerd. Anyway, if you like that segment, let us know in the comments. Leave us a review, like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you guys. But with that said, we are now going to move on to the last part of the show where we always preview what's coming up next week. So in the next episode of Oh So Curious, what are we doing?
Stroking beards for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I shaved my goatee off, so I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah, we're going to make sure there's a nice assortment of facial hairstyles. I'm thinking of going with sideburns. We'll update you next week on what I decided on those. I don't know what's happening next week. There's more stuff coming out. I'm probably going to review something. I'll probably hate it if history serves. I don't know. We'll see.
Andrew's the one who everybody just remember, Andrew's the one who hates Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
He's not a fan of Steven Spielberg. He does not like Saving Private Ryan. I mean,
John Williams.
Those three things
add
are all
to that
connected.
list.
What?
Or chocolate.
Not chocolate.
Or
There's no chocolate.
Or
Not
John
a fan
Williams.
of John Williams.
I like some of his stuff, but
Okay. All right.
That's the most I've ever heard of from Andrew. Is like, it's I kind of.
no. When
Like
I
he
love
never
something,
fully says it either. It's kind of like, it's and this hand motion. It's always this hand motion.
It's all relative. It's all relative.
Yeah. Well, listen. When I love something, you will absolutely know.
And
I'll
we
be
don't
honest
know
with you.
because you
Dude,
don't.
you have done a few reviews since you've been on the show, right? And it's like more often than not, I've never seen you review something like a movie, for example, or a TV show, where you were like, "Oh my God, that was so good! 2 thumbs up!" Like you were always. I think the best we have gotten is indifference, and the worst we have gotten is, "I hate it, terrible."
Sounds like me.
You have
Honestly,
you have
Andrew,
a very
I would love for you
discerning
to. It
taste.
doesn't even matter what year, any year. Just pick something. Doesn't even have to be a movie. It could be a commercial. Or I would love to see what you're like. This, this is top tier. This
You
is
want
what
me
I
to review
expect.
something I like
Yes.
and just pull it out of somewhere?
Actually, I don't even think I want you to do that because even then you'd be like, now that I think about it, I don't even know if it's that good.
You're not wrong. You know what? I'm gonna be on the lookout. I'm gonna try and find something I really like.
You know what? Maybe that's what next week's episode is going to be about. We're going to force Andrew to find something he really likes and then make him talk about it.
Yeah.
All right.
We're just going to enjoy the process of him struggling to find that something.
It's
But
gonna be a long week trying to find something,
oh,
but I'll
yeah,
do
I
it.
can
Sure.
imagine. But
Look
anyway,
forward to that.
it's been Oh So Curious, where it's 3 curious minds trying to tell time. We had an all-star lineup today, as usual. Thanks so much for watching. We really enjoy your company each and every week. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a comment below. Tell us what you thought about this show. And of course, if you're listening to us as a podcast, then leave us a 5-star review, or don't leave us a 5-star review. Tell us what you think. We would love to get your Rotten Tomatoes score on our show. But until next time, it's been Oh So Curious with Daniel, Roland, and Andrew, and we will see you next time.
Alrighty.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
All right.